Discovery's 4 computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
Autumn Glory by Julie Holbesch-Mond. This was taken at Harts Hill Hayes Country Park during the autumn of last year. Using a slow shutter speed and a high depth of field, processing was very light, just a boost of colour. Bench Among the Ferns by Margaret Waterson. This was taken at Cork Abbey earlier this week. Using zoom twist method. Never did this before. Hope the results of my efforts are okay. Birmingham New Street by Julie Holbesch-Mond. This was taken by setting the camera to multiple exposures and slowly moving the camera in all directions to create the image. This shot is out of camera. Bluebell Wood by Gary Wood. This was at Harts Hill Hayes Country Park and was the first of a 3-image merge. This and another shot being taken on a tripod. For this image the camera was angled up, set in a long exposure and a tripod head tilted down during the exposure. The second image the camera was set to a short exposure and the image taken from where the head was finished. Then a third image was added to give extra larger bluebells. Bluebell Fantasy by Ian Waite. Centre of the Circle by Paul Steens. After many unsuccessful handheld attempts, I changed to my 7300 lens, which has a tripod collar. I was then able to place it on the tripod and spin it so that the red cosmos flower remained in the centre. Shot at half a second f14 ISO 100. Processed in Infinity Photo, I copied the layer and changed the blend mode to overlay and boost the effect. Croft Trees by John Smith. Crotchets by Peter Lawrence. This was taken using some small coloured lights against a black background using ICM. I tidied up in Lightrooms and Photoshop. The finished result reminded me of musical crotchets. 2.5 seconds at f4, ISO 80 with a 24-120 lens at 60mm Nikon 850. Dahlia Dance by Roger Leck. I've never tried this before. I read the instructions and used plants in the garden. Early Autumn by Steve Beckson. Ferns by Margaret Waterson, again taken at Cork Abbey earlier this week. Flowers by Chantal Cooper. Garden by Alan Cook. ISO 100 with 2 grey filters to get a long exposure, tweaked in Photoshop. Ice Cream by Peter Lawrence. Taken using a couple of my granddaughter's toy wooden ice creams. Placed a black background and ICM applied. Tidied up in Photoshop and Lightrooms. Nikon 850 1 second at f8, ISO 100 with a 24-120 lens at 44mm. Into the Woods by Steve Pears. Nation by Ian Waite. Only a Rose by Steve Pears. Overgrown Ferns by Los Waterson. Rose Garden by Alan Cook. ISO 100 with 2 grey filters tweaked in Photoshop. Rosa's Roundabout by Roger Leck. Tarn House by Gary Wood. I was walking around Tarn House in the Lake District on a relatively miserable day when I found this quite spooky corner. Thought this would emphasise the effect. Tree Lines by Steve Beckson. Trees by Chantel Cooper. Warwick Castle by Paul Steens. I had taken a few images by quickly flicking the camera about my wrist, a technique used by a YouTuber I watched called Andy Gray, where he creates very painterly effects of mostly iconic landmarks, which I quite like. In Affinity Photo I combined 4 images, setting the opacity of the added layers to a low value to try and get the look I was after. This was my first attempt, but I have a very long way to go. Wild Bracken by John Smith. Wild Flowers by Ros Waterson.